Welcome to episode number 1. Scott Ritzheimer, I've got you in the interview chair. I am not the host. My name's Josh, but I get to interview the host of the show. And Scott, that's you. Congratulations on the launch of your new podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I think this will be my favorite episode because I just get to sit here and let you do all the hard work.
That's right. I got to come up with these great questions. And the first question is going to be, what is this podcast about? So for our listener who's gone back and they're kind of like watching the movie trailer now before maybe they've heard an episode or two already and they're like, okay, I'm loving this. I want to go back and start from the beginning. What is the premise of Secrets of the High Demand Coach?
It actually comes from a really personal story for me. So I started at my entrepreneurial journey in earnest at the ripe old age of 20. Now, I get that I look like I'm about 20 right now. So suffice it to say that was many years ago. And I had no idea what I was doing and thought I knew everything about what I was doing. And so went through the world of being an entrepreneur, those early stages of fighting to survive, to the fun stages of this is amazing, we can't do anything wrong, to the miserable stages of we can't do anything right, all on our own. I had a business partner that was great. I had a wonderful team around me, but when we bumped into a problem, if we couldn't solve it, we were up a creek, right? That was it. And we tried a couple of times really poorly to find a good coach that could help us out. And 3 out of 3 times we got burned in a really bad way. It was just a bad relationship. And it just really turned us off to the idea of coaching. Now, that is what it is, but what it had was a really profound side effect, which meant that we were alone. If we couldn't figure it out, we really were up a creek. There was nowhere that we could go to help because we tried it 3 times and it didn't work. Now, we had a big part in why those 3 didn't work out. The coaches had a big part in why that didn't work out. But what I found out as I sold that company and decided, hey, I want to take a stab at this coaching thing myself, I realized that just about every business owner you talk to has had a bad experience with a coach. And I've actually done this, and I've been out speaking places and I've gone around the room and, ask a group of entrepreneurs, have you ever had a coach? And a lot of them actually say yes. And then I ask them, have you ever had a bad experience with a coach? And again, 9 out of 10 times I get a yes. And it breaks my heart because I know they're sitting in the same place that I was. They're sitting there feeling like I've tried the coaching thing. They led me somewhere I didn't want to go. They gave me bad advice. They took my money and I really didn't get a return on it. Whatever it is, there's some kind of a bad experience there. And the net result of it is a coach who's frustrated that they didn't help a client, but more often than not, it's a founder who feels alone. And the whole reason that I started Scale Architects, the whole reason I've started this podcast is because I don't want founders to feel alone. And so I've had the privilege since that time of finding some really incredible coaches who've just moved us miles downfield. And I, in a very selfish sort of way, decided I wanted to bring them on the show so I could get more advice from them because they gave me really, really good advice in the past. And so it's a way for me to get free coaching from some of my favorite people in the world. But no, in all honesty, it's a way for me to help folks see that there are amazing coaches out there and to hear their biggest, brightest ideas, we could call them their deepest secrets, but to just get a glimpse behind the curtain, see what it's like to enter the world as a coach, to help clients as a coach, and to see what these folks are doing for their clients. Because I can tell you, I've just seen some unbelievable things happen. It's like lightning in a bottle. When you get a good coach, the right coach for the right time, and you get a client who's got that fascinating combination of like that entrepreneurial, I'm going to figure this out, but marked by the humility to say, I can't figure it all out by myself. And when you put those two together, it's magical what happens. And so the goal of the show is to do that, to help folks find the right coach, to understand what coaching can do for them, and to get some of the best advice that you can find.
This podcast is almost like a spotlight. So as you interview more and more coaches, I think there's someone I've hired coaches, you've hired coaches. I think we're going to also, as from a consumer standpoint, I think it's going to be really valuable to listen to how coaches operate so we can start to normalize what true high achieving, successful coaches, the coaches that everybody wants to work with. I think we're going to start to likely hear patterns, right? About, I'm starting to hear this a lot. And that will help us to understand, am I working with a great coach or should I hire one of your guests?
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. So, yeah, for folks who are out there like, hey, I've got a coach. It's great. Well, one of the things that you're going to find is you may not have a great coach, right? I hope that you do. Most coaches are wonderful people, right? So, that's not to say that there are bad coaches that are out there stealing money I just don't believe that at all. I do believe that there's the wrong coach for the wrong time. I also do believe that there's the wrong coach there's just a wrong fit. It's a lot like hiring an employee. You can go out and you can find a great employee with a great resume and you bring them into your organization and it doesn't work at all. Well, whose fault is that? Ultimately, it's your fault. You picked them. You're in charge, right? If you're the founder, you're a leader, you're a CEO, you're in charge of what happens. Well, it's very similar with a coach. If you go in and you go and get the wrong coach that helps you solve the wrong problem or maybe at the wrong time and it doesn't work, that's not necessarily the coach's fault. Sure, there's things that coaches need to do well, of course, but ultimately it's down to you. And so my hope is that as you get this great advice, you see what's out there, you see what a great coach looks like, how they think about the world, how they help their clients. Not only do you increase your odds of finding the right coach, but you also increase your odds of finding a great coach that's perfect for right now.
So, Scott, you have a unique opportunity in the work that you do because you work with coaches. And so you've become a bit of a center of influence in the coaching world. Do you mind just maybe briefly sharing how you typically work with coaches?
Yeah. So what we do with coaches, we do a number of things, but ultimately what we do is we give them a model for bringing all of their skill and to market and finding the right clients at the right time. That right client, right time, right problem is such a big thing. And what I found is, every coach who's out there, they're brilliant at something. The question is, are they brilliant at finding people who need that something? And oftentimes that's not the case. And so what ends up happening is that coaches get outside of their zone of genius, maybe a zone of competence, but not necessarily genius. And so what we do for coaches is we help them to really hone in on what that zone of genius is. And then we teach them how to get more and more clients in that zone of genius, how to help more and more in that space. And then what to do when you come across someone who's not in that zone of genius. And by doing that, we're able to dramatically increase the quality of experience that their clients are feeling. We get to dramatically increase the quality of life that the coach has, because when you're doing a bunch of work and you're having to work really hard to do it because it's not in your zone of genius, it's exhausting. And so many coaches that I know are just burned out and on the fritz because they're doing this work. They've got plenty. It should look like it's a success, but they're spending so much of their time doing things that aren't in their sweet spot that it's just sucking the life out of the what could be the joy of doing what is in their sweet spot. So we really help both sides, right? We really help the founders and leaders to just like the goal of the show, to find the right coach for the right time. But we also help coaches to dial in on when it's the right time so that when they do what they do best, it has a disproportionate return for their clients.
And so for our listener right now, I suspect they know a really great coach that deserves to be recognized on this show. So what are some of those traits that if you know a coach who does this, like what are those? How would we know who would make a great guest for this program, for this podcast?
Yeah, so we're really looking for, there's lots of folks who are just starting out, right? And they're like, they want to get their name out. No one's ever heard of them. That's not necessarily the show that we're looking for, right? We're not looking for people who are still cutting their teeth. This is exclusively for folks who really earned their stripes, right? Who know what they're doing, who have shown competence, and they've built a great book of business because of it. So we're looking for seasoned coaches and consultants. Another thing we're looking for is folks that they've gone out, they're doing their independent, they're doing their own thing, right? There are some folks who are going out, they went the coaching route, the consulting route, and they're using a kind of a model that already exists. They're plugged into a bigger company. They're part of a big corporate consultancy. That's not exactly what we're looking for either. And the reason for that is that this podcast is fundamentally for entrepreneurs. And I think that the folks who know entrepreneurs are the coaches who themselves are entrepreneurs. And so we're looking for folks who can come alongside and say, I'm in your seat, but I also understand your seat and I can help you and focus on your business, which is awesome. And the final bit there is that we're looking for folks who who are in high demand, right? It's not just the every Joe and their brother. We're looking for the folks that if you're a listener and you're wondering, I wonder if there's the person that's changed your life, right? You'll hear from so many people who have just dramatically changed my life. And that's what coaching, even consulting, is supposed to be. And that's the folks that we're looking for.
And we should also point out too that these are not necessarily life coaches or fitness coaches. These are business coaches.
Right. Yeah. And particularly in the entrepreneurial space, right?
Yeah.
And so, there's this massive world, management consulting and all of these things. But what we're looking for is those management consultants, those coaches, even advisors, some financial advisors, but folks that are working with entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've helped start 20,000 organizations. And that's my passion, is helping folks. And interestingly enough, both in the for-profit and not-for-profit spaces. I believe that entrepreneurism is not the purview just of businesses. I think it's equally shows up in churches, in nonprofits, and you'll even see it in some governmental units. But those who are helping the brave out there, who've started their entrepreneurial journey, who've worked and given their life to it, the folks who work in that space, that's who we want to work with.
So to our guest who's listening, sorry for the little delay there, for our guest that's listening right now, all you would do is send them to scalearchitects.com. Scott, that's your website.
That's right.
And then look for a link. It'll be either up at the top or the bottom, and it'll say podcast. Just click on that. And then that's where you don't have to do a formal back and forth pitching or whatever. Just read the qualifications on the page. If you're a fit, go ahead and schedule. And we would love to hear your story. Well, Scott, you'd love to have that conversation with them. And I can't wait to hear, because again, I truly believe that success leaves clues. People that have made it as a coach, I believe this. I think you're going to see some common threads and how exciting it is. I'm thinking, Scott, for the listener who maybe is newer in the coaching journey, to be able to hear all these great case studies of how these coaches got started and how they got their first clients and how they continue to create impact and attract and keep their schedules so filled. This podcast is a gold mine, my friend.
Yeah. It absolutely is. Actually, a few of our very first guests, these are close mentors of mine, but they were instrumental in helping me start this business. And as coaches, we can forget, that we're entrepreneurs too. We're building our own businesses too. And a coach should have a coach, right? It's not just because you're a coach doesn't mean you don't need another one or mean that somehow you're failing as a business leader. I've found that all of the best coaches have either currently have a coach or have had a coach in the past. And so for those who are listening, who are coaches starting out on their journey as well, you're going to just find an immense wealth of advice and wisdom. It's going to be great.
I love it. Scott Ritzheimer, again, founder or CEO. What's your role with Scale Architects?
Founder and CEO.
Okay, founder and CEO. All right, good deal. And of course, the host of the new podcast, Secrets of the High Demand Coach. Congratulations on the launch, and let's get right into episode 2.